welcome to the channel. I've had previous videos recorded, but deleted them by accident. But the only thing I did was get rid of object-oriented methods of saving the game. So I'm gonna go over the stuff again, and I'm also using a different recording software, FFmpeg, instead of OBS, because OBS for some reason doesn't like colors. I don't know, everything looks washed up. I hope YouTube will not wash the colors of this. In any case, I have this opened, and now I'm going to open the editor, move it here, and show off the various things I have here. So just to reiterate, because my videos got deleted, I am trying to make a Zelda-ish game. I'm not really saying Zelda-like because I'm not fully decided. I have some animations, hitting animations. I have no sound here. I also have a pressure switch that pauses the game and shows the gate opening. And that's a pressure switch. This is a rock you can push. It also has real weight behind it. Well, real. This is a chest that's been opened already because I fixed my saving system. And then there's a regular switch that doesn't jump back up. Right? You press it and this opens. So these are the absolutely basic stuff that typically you find in like the first dungeon of a Zelda game. Like in Ocarina of Time, you have pressure switches and you have torches. I don't have torches, but I'm going to go over some of the stuff, how I implemented it. This is my custom debugging line, debug command line. Okay, so I wanted to pack this up a little and share this because this is pretty interesting. It helps me like debug a lot of stuff in the game, like save data and other things, and I can call functions. Game save, for example, and save the game. You can see here, game saved. It also pauses the game. As you can see, the character paused. This is achieved with notifications, not with signals or callbacks. So I'm going to go over basic stuff. So the command line isn't complicated. We have a history. When you press up, you can get, just like in a regular shell, you have a history, and these are the notifications which propagate my custom notification, freeze, which freezes the player. That's like a pause, except I want the player to receive signals. So instead of pausing the whole tree, which I do anyway, but I don't pause the player, so I freeze the processing myself. And here we create a new expression. We get the text from the command line, then we reset it. Click confirm is mapped to enter. We parse it. We have an error here. If there is an error, we print the error. If not, we show the result. Very simple stuff. I might share this, although I think there already are command lines, debug command lines. This is my global singleton where I've initially wanted to make classes for various objects, but I figured that OOP isn't really good. It really isn't. OOP, object-oriented programming, is pretty bad. Like, at least with GDScript, you always end up creating something more complex than you need to. So I got rid of it. I wasted like 2 or 3 hours on it, and then just decided that simple dictionaries do the trick for most of this stuff. So let's go with the pressure switch. We have an is pressed. None of these are stored. Hang on, first let me show how I do the saving. Here I have a dictionary data. Everything that's set here will be automatically stored in the save file. The global singleton then has 2 functions, game save, game load, and this is not fully functional yet with the player position, but here we kind of prove. If we open the file, because I wanted to future-proof stuff so that the game doesn't crash. So during loading, we check if the save data is missing a key, and if it is, it adds it back into the save data. So we do not set anything specifically. Everything has to have a default value, like this stuff. This needs to have some sort of default, because suppose that I update the game, but the file format stays the same. And if in this loading routine I would have something setting like save data non-existent, then it will try to pull that from data, then this would crash the game in the new version. So you would have to delete your save file and open the game again. And we don't want that. I don't want that. I have a function for convenience that resets everything. That just creates an empty blank file, which is probably not good. That's not good. We'll do this. We'll do this, setup defaults, and we place this here, call this, and then where did I take it? For a hard reset we want to delete everything, but we want stuff to have some default values, and if it doesn't exist, it gets added to the save data. This requires, as you can see in the object load here, this requires that the object has some properties like data and object ID. This is a custom function, it's defined here. Object has properties, and the only thing this does is check in the array if inside the property list it has a property with the same name. Returns true if it finds one, false otherwise. Same for the methods, except I don't need to use this right now. But this is my attempt at making more portable code. I'm going to explain why I think object-oriented programming is bad and why I'm using an alternative method. So from this you can see I have 3 functions that start with object. This is basically a library that, not library, well, library, not library, but this kind of mimics how you would do stuff in C, where you would just prefix the stuff and then only call objects. As you can see, the first argument is a node, kind of like you would do in C. Technically we could make this a static function, but I'm not going to do that because I want to access it from global, so that I can perform some resets and other things. I also wanted to have access to its variables. Also, I think I discovered that the inner classes, classes defined like this, and then this, something, this doesn't seem to be an instance method, an instance variable. It seems to be for the whole class, but for .gd files, these are instance variables. So I'm not really entirely sure how this is supposed to work. So Godot.gd script is new. Probably there's some issues, but it's similar to Python, but it strays away from it sufficiently. For example, with the type checking, right? This is an integer, we have match, we have all sorts of complicated matching, partial arrays, everything is in the documentation on the Godot website. Here I spawn an attack effect, but this is not what I want to talk about. So the way I store variables is this. I make sure this is defined and it's a dictionary, or it could be anything actually, it doesn't have to be a dictionary, but I want to have more stuff there. And I define opened, like false. I can actually do this. You can actually do this, but I'm not sure if you can do this, for example. I don't think you can do this. Seems like can't. What? Can you? I don't think you can. No, it wasn't loaded. Yeah. Assignment is not allowed inside expression. You cannot do that, but that would be too much extra. But you can do this, and it's going to be more cohesive, if you like. We have opened, and still not sure how do I deal with items. And the way this is saved is based on the object ID. So here the default is default, and if I wanted to change this stuff, then I would have to go here and give this a different ID. So for example, I type new chest ID here, I run the scene, and the chest is closed even though it was clearly open, and we clearly have saved data. Right, here is the chest. So and you can see another chest. Immediately as it got loaded, it registered in the scene, because every object that in its ready function calls object load. I don't think I've shown that. See, object load, and this is accessible from the global class. And this is why I said that we could make it static, because we have to pass an instance that we want to register and load. And during the load, the object here, the object here is checked if it has data, both data and object ID. If it has this, then it proceeds further, and if object ID is inside the world dictionary in save data, then the object data is linked and set to that dictionary. If we do not have stored anything in the object, we simply create a key so that the object auto-saves, so to speak. So we just assign the object data back here if it's not inside there, because it's going to be empty. This key is going to be empty. And because we use dictionaries, this uses one reference instead of two. If you wanted to literally copy, you would have to duplicate, and we don't want that. We want this to be one reference. That's why there's no object save, even though I had a function that supposedly saves, but it's not necessary when they're linked like this. And if it doesn't find anything, if the object doesn't have those properties, and it just complains that it can't load. That's just for me, for debugging purposes. Here's my enum for game notifications, the freeze, unfreeze. This starts at 1000, so this means this is 1001, etc, etc. I don't care about this, but we need to have some notifications outside of Godot, because otherwise it will clash with the find notification. Notification crash, you see. Let's see, there's a constant. This is defined in main loop scene 3, and we have constant memory warnings. It's 2009. Maybe I should set this to like 10,000, not 1000, because this would clash. Focus, paused, resumed, crash, about, translation changed. Deprecated. Okay, so there's a lot of notifications. Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to play this safe and just start them from 10,000. This allows me to send a notification. I get the tree, I get the root, and then I propagate notification save request. This is specifically for the player because the global position cannot be linked this way, because it cannot be. It just can't be linked in this simple way. Although I could just use object load. It wouldn't really work. I have to take special care for some of this stuff. Then the push block. Okay, so that's how saving works in this case. If you want, I can show the player how I animate this and move. I set standing frames. This is the context stuff. Should probably show this so that I can show you that I'm just using an arrow here. That's the raycast, that's the context raycast, and it always triggers when it's in front of it. And I have to rescale it based on how the character turns, because the character doesn't really turn around. So I have to rotate this manually, basically. Ignore the down, that's probably some stray print. And if I press space, you can see that the player cast collision. That means that I press space and the target hit something. If it's not hitting anything, that it won't trigger anything. So space is how you activate stuff. So this is a context arrow, context sensitive. This rock also has weight, I'm gonna show that. Also, these doors deactivate their collisions. If you can see here, debug character body to the push block stepped on weighted switch. Inside delayed activation, that's the pausing. And once the delayed activation finishes, then it activates the door, and the door saves its collision mask here at the very start, and here it unlocks the gate, but it actually works. So if I were to go here and push the switch away and step away, then the gate closes, right? And I can't go back because it restores the collision mask and the collision layer. I think I saved both the layer and the mask and that's why you get a working gate with a switch. Also, there's a little bug here that you can actually push the block when the block is not even the block has a raycast itself. If you can see that here. You have to be walking right to trigger it, right? We can push it out of the way, but we can also push it when we are not hitting it a little bit. If you notice, then yeah. So this is because it's a character body and the velocities collide, so I'm probably going to have to turn this into a static body or something like that and change that. But anyway, back to my gate and chest. So the chest opened. It should give me an item, but I haven't configured that yet. And the save data now contains the open chest. If I don't save, the chest will not save. So if I save, it's saved, and when I load the game, it will again automatically load the chest. And it's loaded, it's opened, and if I switch this back to default, it will also load, meaning that I can add chests into the game, and the older save file, as long as it uses the older IDs, will remember the chest with the ID. And it will consider it open and closed, and there's no problem, right? It will load it properly. The only problem would be accidentally changing the object ID or something like that. But as long as the chest stays has the same ID, then it will work. Now, that's not what I wanted. The pressure switch, I'm going to explain how the pausing works. So I connect the area 2D with two functions, trigger switch and release switch. I set up timers, that's the pause timer and the delay activation timer. We add them, we connect the timeouts to on, pause and activate. And we set the process mode to always, because when we pause everything through this and this, then it will not trigger, right? If this was inherit, if the mode is inherit, then yeah. So we kind of have to pause certain objects and not pause others if you want that. We can use the pause for game pausing, but since the processing always triggers, there's some extra logic involved with pausing the game with a pause menu instead of a sort of mini cutscene, or how you wanna call the camera panning, even though my camera isn't panning, but yeah. I always thought it was kind of a neat little touch in Zelda games. When you activate something, the game shows you what you've activated. I think that's a good idea. In any case, here we have the pause time, we connect them, that's on ready. So once it's set up, it's going to be connected. And when the player now enters the switch, right, this is the area 2D, he enters the switch, and if it's not already pressed, then disallow pressing the switch twice. Obviously, this will just return. And if the object is of the class global player class or push block class. This is the OOP stuff that's still left in my game, which I need to check if it's the player or something else, something that probably has weight. But I kind of don't want enemies to trigger it, so maybe this will stay here as a check. And this is a exported variable. We can set if it's weight sensitive. By default it's false. That's the second switch. And the connected node. The connected node is the object that needs to be activated upon pressing the switch. So player steps here, or something weighted, weight steps here. It starts the debug print. Here it just tells me what stepped on the switch. We set the frame to 0 because that's the pressed animation, or the pressed frame, and we set this to true. And we call delayed activation. Delayed activation is here. And the delayed activation does this. Print something from my information and propagates freeze. This will freeze the player because the player is always processing as well, so we have special logic to handle the player. There's a reason for it, because if I didn't do this and I just did pause, then my arrow key input on release wouldn't register. Like, it was a bug I had to fix, because if the processing mode is set to inherit when pauses, and when you obviously are holding a key when you step on the switch. Right, I'm just going to try and illustrate this somewhat. So I'm holding a key and I release it during the pause. And the fact that I release it during the pause causes the signal to be lost if the player is not in the always processing mode. So that's why I had to implement special logic for the player to pause. And the special logic is simply implemented in this function. With frozen, you can see that this causes this to trigger. And I stop the animation, whatever it is. And in the process, which I have here, this is what I do. This is the special logic. Because this is the bug I recorded, player freezing is outside the pause, improves input response right after the freeze, otherwise the signal gets dropped. This also means the subtle bugs can arise if it's not handled carefully, so we simply do not process anything if the player is frozen. Basically, it's my way of pausing the game, but we can still receive inputs, and that's the important part. Because the input here on all arrows is, if the action is released, I set the move vector to multiply this vector dx, which prevents the player from moving left and right when you release it. But only that, that's a bit more complicated. I've written many controllers for player controllers. So this is the best one, but it doesn't work well with a controller. In any case, this is why I had to do this. Going back, this is the debug key pressure switch. So after that we set the notification and then we pause in case other objects behave the same way, so we give them a chance to do something, some processing, then pause. And after we pause, we start the timer. So we actually don't activate the gate instantly. We start the timer, which is set to half a second. Delay activation timer calls activate connected. So after half a second, this triggers. and the pause timer also starts. This activates the gate, and the player is still paused. So the gate has a chance to do its thing before we return control to the player. And here is a clumsy way of checking which method to call. I kind of have to streamline this as well, because we can unlock maybe something but not activate it, and we can activate it but not unlock it. Maybe that's a bit unnecessary. So the timer starts, but the code keeps going, and it hits it skips this and it hits this because we have a gate that has activate, and then it just calls activate on the connected node, which I specify here in this switch. Right. Barred gate, it's this one. This is barred gate 2, and that's connected to this switch. So you can see this is not weight sensitive, and we also have a weight threshold, and this block also has weight. So my weight threshold here is 30, but I'm going to show you that if the weight is less, then the block will not trigger the switch, and also it will be easier to push because it's lighter. Right? It's lighter, so it doesn't activate the switch at all. You can push it onto it and the switch ignores it because the threshold is 30, and the player by default has 100. That's a random number. The player activates it, but not the rock. Well, I found a bug. If you push it and leave it there, then it still works. Okay, so that's one bug. So I have to check the pressure switch again and check the weight. If it's not weight sensitive, it's on. So if it is, if object weight is bigger than weight threshold, then yeah. Okay, then well, it's pressed. Kind of have to implement this double checks. And okay. It should work in theory. Oops. This is why. Okay, get rid of this. If it's pressed and has no overlapping bodies, I want this to check maybe get overlapping bodies. Let's check if this is a function even. Let's see. Nope. I need to check if there is a body still on it that has weight larger than the threshold. So if it's not, so I need to check the weight of every single object. So I'm just going to have to get rid of this. If body has player class of body push block class if body weight is less if body weight is bigger than weight threshold, but only if it's weight sensitive, and this is release default true. Oh, release will be false. If release, then do this. This should work. Okay, that works. Yep. Okay, we fixed it. So, if there is an object whose weight is above the threshold on the switch, then the switch will remain active, otherwise it closes. So that the rock, so that you can cheese it by first stepping on it and oh boy. So now I just need to check if just reset the weight to 50 or something. It should work. works. Nice. Okay, works as intended. And now I'm going to actually so I use fossil, but you can use git or whatever you want. Okay, so that was a tangent, mainly because I had to fix a problem with this, but now we actually get it. The push block isn't complicated. The push block has a default value of 100, and here is how I deal with the push speed. I can just delete this, right? It should work still the same. Yeah. Yeah, okay, works. I was checking if it was lighter. On player intersect, these are the rays, the object. Oh, a lot of stuff I have opened. What did I want? Oh, right. Push block. Where is it? So this push block has these arrows, and this one downward is turned off, well, smaller, because our character has a different collision rectangle, so that it starts pushing it when I actually want to push it. So this block is pushable, and we have ray casts here in every direction, and every time one of them intersects, we call a callback. This is my experimentation with lambdas and anonymous functions. Here I make a movement vector which returns a function that moves the player in the desired direction, which is specified here. And we also do a Boolean check, which was cool when I discovered this, that you can actually do this in regular programming languages. So this is like Prolog, in the sense that we call a function that returns true or false. And it returns a boolean where the collision was successful. So if any of these are successful, then the subsequent function is not called. So if down is intersected, then these functions are not even called. They're not even evaluated. When up is checked, then these remaining aren't evaluated if this returns true. And we do that by OR and like this backslash, because we continue the expression, so it looks nice. So the worst case scenario is that it checks 4 times, and the best case scenario is that it checks once. Neat, huh? Move and slide is something you have to call, because JDScript 4 requires you to set the velocity of the object. This is not colliding with previous stop anyway. If this wasn't here, this would be a sliding block. Oh right, if this wasn't here, the block would slide. Let me show you. Just I uncomment one line and I add a functionality to this, which would be a bug because I didn't want this to slide, but yeah, boink, and it slides and stops, right? Oh, it shouldn't stop, but whatever. Would need a bit more thought put into it, but this kind of works well. And I have a player spawner that just loads the player scene, adds it as a child to the parent, and sets the position. I don't know what more reliable way to set this. And we have to use call deferred for some reason. Because some stuff needs to be called later for Godot to work as it should. The melee swoosh has no code, that's just a scene that gets rotated. That's this, me pressing X, this wave of sorts. It's a slash that's actually animated because 4 frames is easy to animate. It has a hitbox. It does have a hitbox. It's just not visible. Well, as you can see, there's a extra line. It's just a line segment. It's not actually a rectangle, because I haven't messed around with those yet. And the way the direction changes is simply with rotation. I'm not flipping the sprite, but I'm rotating the actual object. You can see here. And I spawn a tag. If it has the node, if it doesn't have the node attack, because we don't want to spawn a bunch of these, we instantiate the melee attack, we call it name so that we can reference it as this node. We got the child, we set the position to the size of the vector divided by 2, because that's just not, it could be anything really. I'm just setting it to the context vector because it places, because the context vector gets rescaled every time the player turns, whatever, right? So the context vector is changed here every time the animation changes. It probably should be here because that's how, look, this is animation, this is actual vectors, and just scales the vector here properly, changing its direction. We get the effect node of this melee attack scene, and here is just a little trick. Depending on the position, if it's a relative position, because how it's scaled, we can reliably check if the y coordinate and x coordinate are less than 0 and rotate it based on that. Right? And because it's rotated, everything rotates, including the line segment that's used for collision. And instead of animation finished, we have to use animation looped, despawn a tag and play the default animation For some reason when I type finished, then it just never finishes. I guess that's I guess the signal is emitted when you stop the animation manually. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't read the documentation on this, but this is what I used, and it despawns the attack, stops it, and queues free. And when it's freed, then this can trigger again because we have this guard clause. I think people call this guard clause, but yeah, because yeah, the way this all works is periodic checks, so you have to kind of make sure that a lot of stuff doesn't trigger, right, if you don't want it to. This get actel, this is for the player. This is not something you can easily see, but the player has some weight to it when you press the button, so that you can do something like this, right? Notice how very little the character moves when I just tap the button, because it's actually using an acceleration, which is going to be important with controlled with the controller, because right now only the D-pad works. But if you can hear my button pressing, that yeah, the controller works. And my controller is very old. It has this button that allows you to use the analog stick as a D-pad, because normally the analog stick only goes up and right for a slightly complicated reason I'm not going to get into here. But these work normally. These work as well. The collision is proper. So the only thing that really remains to be done here for me is I've also like made is the items and destroying crates. I have a crate. I've also made a bunch of okay, that's not good. It's not weight sensitive. Oh boy. Release switch if it's pressed. Bummer. Okay. I'm probably going to have to debug a bit more and check if the issue from before was solved. This was solved. I should actually check this like this. Hang on. Level 1 puzzle push block. This should be here. Okay, and we set the weight to 10. Okay. Nope. Oh, wait, it's 31. Wait. Should be. Okay. We have to call set instead of equals. For some reason, this is just a quirk of the whole debugging thing. Set it to 10. So the weight should read 10, and it should be lighter and not trigger this, and not stay triggered. Okay, good. So yeah, this is one reason why I like this debug line, because you can do stuff like this. Even though this should work, like it should be 1, right? But it somehow ends up not actually triggering anything, and there's nothing in the debugger either, right? There's just these are never used. Okay. Okay, so now I've shown you basically everything that I've deleted by accident. There will be more videos with this. I still want to implement NPCs. I already have the placeholder art for this, in case you want to see the beautiful black and white artwork of placeholder art. And here it is. You can barely see the swoosh because it's kind of whitish, yellowish. I'm probably going to try and make this full screen sizable. Oh, it is. So this would be kind of amazing if you could play it like this on full screen. So I don't think I'm going to change the properties. I'm going to let people to scale this, except that there's one problem, and that problem I don't think I can solve. Because this like is big, like I like it when you can see a lot of stuff, but the problem here is the edge, because the edge is different for this, see? So I'm going to probably have to think of a way to either make the edge look prettier, so that it's not like an ugly black bar, but maybe there's going to be like some swirls or whatever, or try to adjust the camera in a more logical way. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching. There will be probably a lot more series of these videos with varying quality and other stuff. But yeah, if you care enough, you can just like the video or whatever. People just say this, but so I'm going to join because everyone's saying that. If you really care, but I don't really, whatever. If you want something explained further, then let me know in the comments. Because I have future-proof stuff, save systems, I think we'll see. I can like explain other things. I've decided that I'm going to, like, this is not a tutorial, right? This is just me rambling and explaining what I do with these objects, and how I work with Godot, and Godot4.2 is really good. Like, they've implemented lambdas, they've implemented a lot of cool stuff. There's some, here you can see I've used a randomized brush for these tiles, which makes it sprays them around. I'm also, this game will be placeholder art for a good while. Maybe even the first demo of this game is going to use placeholder art, because I want a prototype that will work first. There's still a lot of stuff I need to work out, but I'm either going to implement it, then make a video on it, or implement it on video, but that might be slower for me. So maybe the first approach would be better. I don't think there's anything left to explain, except maybe the way I name my variables, but maybe that's better for later. Not variables. These things, game load, as you can see, I prefix everything for the type I expect to use it for. This is for any object, and it deals with any object and performs some operations on them, like loading, right? The reason this isn't in a parent class of a node object is because every object would then have to use that specific extended class. If you don't know what I mean is this. So I want a character body, static body, all of these. I want all of these to be able to load themselves. And I cannot do that with object-oriented programming. I just cannot. Because Godot disallows multiple inheritance, which is a good idea in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways it's not, because you want to integrate some functions into the thing. So this is why I have to do this manually for every chest, and it works. And then we see this can be static body, this can be anything, because the object only requires that this be a node. And we cannot extend node and static body, we can only have one extend. And this is why object-oriented programming is bad. In this instance, where I want any object of any kind to be able to use this function, and at the same time I want my scripts to either be static body, character body, maybe even node2D, maybe rigid body, it doesn't matter, right? I cannot make a class to extend here that would incorporate this one function into all of them. So either a static function, which this one basically is, but I want to access save data, which is global for this quote-unquote singleton, which, I mean, otherwise I would have to pass the singleton here as well. So yeah, but this is supposed to act on object. So yeah, this is more of a library with an internal state, which is what you can do with C files, for example. There's scope in those files, regardless of what it is. So yeah, okay, I've been rambling on way too much. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you next time with my stupid ramblings and perhaps even dumber ways of doing things. So thanks, have a good one, bye bye.